You're listening to Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. Tampa Bay is a pro sports town. You've got the Lightning for hockey, Buccaneers for football, and the Rays for baseball. That attracts folks for hundreds of games in the area this year. But there's another huge presence. The numbers are in for the first IndyCar Series broadcast of the season for the audience that watched Alex Palou and Josef Newgarden battle it out on the streets of St. Petersburg's waterfront. 1.4 million viewers watched, a steep increase from last year's race. And if you were anywhere near downtown St. Petersburg at the start of March, you probably heard it, as the streets alongside the marina were transformed into a racetrack for the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg.
Obviously, being here at St. Pete, the facility's beautiful. Even just walking the track, seeing like the yachts on the side, it's a very high-class level of racing, which is awesome to be a part of.
That's Hailie Deegan, one of the drivers. More from her in a moment. And in the next 30 minutes, how the Grand Prix and other sporting events like this week's NCAA Women's Final Four bring thousands of fans into the greater Tampa Bay region and rev up the economy. First, here are some of the fans who are in St. Petersburg to take in the sights and sounds of the Grand Prix. Up close to the track, the noise is ear-splitting. A lot of the fans wear earplugs or earmuffs.
It is lovely. It is convenient. I love it. I love that it's here, the sound of the race cars. I can hear it all the way from my house, so I love it.
That's Jessica Haynes. It was her fifth time at the Grand Prix, but she's been around motor racing her whole life.
I actually grew up with NASCAR. My mom's best friend was a NASCAR driver when I was little, so I kind of followed it from maybe 5 and up and was behind the scenes.
Some travelled from a bit further away, like Bella Armstrong.
I'm from Dallas, actually. We were moving. We had to come out to look for apartments anyway, and the race was this weekend, so we just scheduled it together.
A lot of the fans at the Grand Prix were there with family, like Rich Solomon. Here's what got him into racing.
It's actually my son. He is a Formula One fan due to the Netflix series Drive to Survive. Since he got into racing, we just decided to start coming, and it's probably been our 5th year now. So,
Rich Collishaw brought his 11-year-old son, Ethan. Collishaw said he's been coming here since the first IndyCar Series in 2005, and motor racing's a family tradition.
Grandfather, father, all been around racing, building cars, so it's been our blood for forever.
Racing runs in Hailie Deegan's family too. Deegan was a NASCAR driver before switching over to IndyCar racing.
I raced dirt. I grew up dirt racing. And then I made the switch over to NASCAR when I was about 15. Won a few races in the NASCAR K&N Series. And then raced NASCAR trucks and then Xfinity.
And how did you get into racing? Is your family, is that something your family does?
Yeah, my dad helped start the sport of freestyle motocross, competed in X Games for almost 10 years. It's a long time. He raced rally cars, off-road trucks. So he kind of made, I guess, the introduction to racing to me, and that's when I kind of fell in love with it.
When was the first time you got behind the wheel of a racing car?
I was about 8 years old when I started racing. And I'm 23 now, so been at it for quite a few years.
This was Deegan's first time competing in St. Petersburg. For Lochie Hughes, who grew up on Australia's Gold Coast, it was his 3rd year driving here.
It's a cool atmosphere. Everyone's sort of based pretty much in Indianapolis in this series, and so we go from freezing our bits off for the last few months, and then we come here and it's warm and it's just a nice atmosphere. Reminds me of the Gold Coast back home, so I always enjoy that aspect of it. And it's just, it's a fun track.
For some insight into what the Grand Prix injects into the economy of St. Petersburg and how it fits into the wider sports tourism ecosystem, we reached out to Chris Steinocker. Well, Chris Steinocker is President and CEO at the St. Petersburg Area Chamber of Commerce. Chris, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate that.
Oh, we're excited. Thank you very much for having us.
So first of all, how much of St. Petersburg's overall tourism is tied to sports?
I think you'll find that both from a major sports level to more of the softball tournament level, it's a significant percentage, but I don't believe it's as big as we think it really is. I am amazed that I'll give you an example. Our Grand Prix is a pretty big one, and that really that's an economic impact, which is huge, of $60 million to our economy. So that is a huge one. You're talking 15,000 hotel room nights. And right alongside of that, you have stuff like Reggae Fest at Sunsplash, where you have the similar. But when you look at those numbers and you look at, in Pinellas County alone, $11 billion in tourism, and an event like Grand Prix provides $60 million of it. that means you got to do a ton of Grand Prix just to get to that 11 million. So I really believe while the sports industries from the WW events that we had at the Trop site, they all contribute. But I believe it's still the beaches that lead us in our economy and our downtown art scene that will always continue to do it. But thank God we have the bigger events, because it really does kick off the seasons in ways where those hotels are able to charge a little more for their ADR, their average daily rate, which allows them to be able to invest a little bit more in our community. So we love the big events because they help the economy grow at a quicker pace than just the normal tourists that come in, because they're competing for tables and competing for rooms. So prices go up and our businesses make a little bit more money.
Are you saying, though, there's room for expansion? Like, because you're saying like the sporting events don't contribute as much as people may think, because they look at some of these marquee events and say, wow, there's a lot of people. There's room for more sporting events to come to the St. Petersburg area and help boost the economy?
Yeah, I really believe that is, we've only scratched the surface of it. I really do believe that, we have the opportunity to continue to attract more and more folks to our community for those bigger events. What we've learned about St. Pete is, especially on an evening or an afternoon like the Grand Prix, we had two other events going on. So while we had the 150,000 people from the Grand Prix, we had other folks doing seafood festivals and other kinds of festivals in our community, bringing in more people. So I don't believe we've hit our limit yet as far as the number of events or the number we can do in even one weekend. Mm-hmm. We are proud that we do almost 300 events on our waterfront in St. Pete every year. So it's not every weekend we're only doing one. Every weekend we're probably averaging 4 different events in our community, which sounds almost outstanding, impossible. But I think that's part of it. So I do believe the bigger events, especially the sporting events, drive real cash. And especially another thing to think about is the Grand Prix is a great example. While it's 15,000 hotel room nights and it's 60 million in economic impact, you're also talking about all these folks who stick around a little bit longer than just that weekend. So the race car teams, the ownership groups, mm-hmm. Stick around for more than just that weekend. They were here for a couple weeks before because they go down to Sebring and test a little bit, come back here. Mm-hmm. So my sense is the bigger events, they come in with a lot more capital equipment, so they have a lot more investment into it, so they have to rent more things, and then they stay longer. So we like those kind of complicated events as far as bigger events go, because they're going to be here longer and stay longer. So boat races are another great example of that. If they can stick around long enough and they can buy their throttles and their cables from our suppliers here, and they buy their groceries from the Publix or the Rollin' Oats in our neighborhood, those are the kind of things that I do believe add up that we may not track as much, but we know they're spending every day, and let's keep them here as long as we can. It's our economy.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, the Grand Prix is a 3-day event, right? So it does bring tourists that may stay a little bit longer and have a little more money to spend. So how does that kind of event, like the Grand Prix, compare to, say, a weekend of professional baseball?
Yeah, there's no comparison. I mean, because a weekend of professional baseball, which we know rings our registers and we know allows people to continue to invest in our community and find things in our community, a Grand Prix, because even the ownership group for the Grand Prix, if you think about how many dollars they're investing in just the track build a couple weeks before, and all those construction companies and the Steps is the construction company that moves the barriers, and mm-hmm. how many trucks they have running, and those truck drivers that are getting their paychecks. And so you're talking about a pretty complicated system that, while, weekend we can measure it, but over the month before and a couple weeks after, still have people coming and going. And that they had to stay at hotels, they had to buy groceries, they had to come out to buy a beer or two, and that's when our members and that's when the registers ring in St. Pete.
You mentioned baseball. I want to get to that in a moment, but just staying with the Grand Prix for now, professional sports do raise the city's profile across the country. Racer.com estimated that 1.4 million viewers watched this year's Grand Prix. Is that the same, Chris, as placing an ad on TV, or is it more valuable?
I think it's as valuable. Maybe more, because what they got to see, first of all, the perfect timing for us to get that many eyeballs, which I think is one of the better numbers we've ever seen posted, pretty significant. What people got to see is a St. Pete that is beautiful, Monaco-like a waterfront setting, but they didn't see any of the destruction. They didn't see any of the storm damage. So for us, why we feel like it was better than they had this time is people know we were open for business. And I'm telling you, even these last couple of weeks after the event, as you've probably seen, St. Pete's been leading Pinellas County in our tourism dollars for people coming downtown St. Pete. And that's never been done before. Our beaches have always led the growth of our tourism effort. And for this last month, it was the St. Pete downtown area that did so. So thank God we had the Grand Prix. Thank God those owners are in our community and they were able to continue to have that event for us because I do believe it helped us kickstart, but also buoy what we really needed to show people was St. Pete's still open for business, and these kind of events allow people to test it for themselves.
Yeah.
If you think about it, like many of us learn about cities because of our travels, and sometimes it's business. So you go to Chicago for a convention, so you know what it's like, and so you're ready to come back and visit. But in St. Pete, you have to really come down here for some other reason, and it's maybe your grandparents or aunts or uncles used to live here. We hear that a lot, but when we get people that are coming to this event, we know we'll get them back. And I'd love to see the return on the visitors who come back to us, but I know out of our visitor center we sense that we just get them started in our community. And I'm telling you, our conversion rate from a visitor to somebody who wants to be the lucky one to live in St. Pete is pretty astounding as well, I think.
Okay, so you mentioned baseball before and fighting to keep the Rays in Tampa Bay, and that is kind of a big change to the city's sports tourism in many ways, right? The destruction of Tropicana Field during Hurricane Milton, taking 81 games across the bay to Tampa this season. Now, the baseball team has been a steady source of income for the city for 25 years. Can businesses recoup or address the loss?
Oh, I'm sure they can, but let me be honest here. It's going to be a loss. It's a big loss. It's registers that don't ring. It's people that don't get called in for their shift. And those people don't get to buy groceries that night and don't feed their families. So it's a huge loss for our community. Will we rebound and regain from whatever happens next? Absolutely. People have been talking about convention business and that will help us, and I know it will. But we have to readjust. Our economies were built on this. When we as a community decided to do this way back in 1998, we knew that we were depending on this to bring people to our downtown on a regular basis. And many of our businesses had invested in that model. And especially when we heard here to stay, many of them doubled down on their investment into the corridors that would bring those visitors to us. So I do believe it's a huge loss. I don't think it's insurmountable to bring back, but this summer will be a great test. Like after this event, after this interview, I am actually going to the Rays game over in Tampa to root our team on and to tell everybody that we're excited for when they come back here. But right now, I know most of our folks that are around the stadium, like our Fergs right now would be blowing and going right now because the streets would be closed and we'd have a lot of people out there partying right now. And while I'm sure there's some people out there, it's not like it used to be. So, and our summers do get kind of thin with tourists. And so we do depend on this. So let's check back in a few months. And I really do think you have another story here of how much impact are we seeing.
Is there anything that the Chamber of Commerce can do to help bolster some of those businesses over the summer?
Yeah, that's what we're putting our heads together now with groups like the Edge District and all the different business districts to inspire business meetings to come to our downtown area, to work with the Beaches Chamber on any kind of messaging to make sure that people understand to come down to this area. So the Sunrunner is perfect timing for us to try to get people to make sure that they know it's easy to come down here, even though there's not a game. We promote our second Saturday Art Walk as a really fun way to bring people into the community, and then they get sticky to us. So I believe that you're going to see us kind of double down on some of our art promotions and some of the other events and concerts that happen along our waterfront. Like Reggae Sunsplash this last time when we had Sting and Shaggy on Thursday night, this place was rocking. So I don't think it's necessarily always sports, but it is those kind of activities that we can count on so that shifts can happen and people can get paid and people can buy groceries for their families.
Chris Steinocker, President and CEO at St. Petersburg Area Chamber of Commerce. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
This was fun. Thank you.
You're listening to Florida Matters. Coming up, Tampa counts down to the NCAA Women's Final Four. This is Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. The popularity of women's basketball has been steadily growing, and this weekend some 30,000 fans are expected to descend on Tampa for the NCAA Women's Final Four.
That will do it for the first time in program history. UCLA is headed to the Final Four.
That was the sound of the UCLA Bruins winning over the weekend to head to their first ever Women's Final Four. Claire Lessinger is with the Tampa Bay Sports Commission. She's the Executive Director of the Tampa Bay Local Organising Committee hosting the Women's Final Four. Claire, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. No, it's a pleasure.
So this is the fourth time Tampa has hosted the Women's Final Four. What makes Tampa a good destination for this competition, and what goes into getting this event here?
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, we're clearly unbelievably biased here in Tampa, but we do think the separator for us at times is we've got great weather, right? We got a great destination. We're a destination city, but it's the warmth of our people and the continuity of the team that is bidding on and hosting these major events. So the Sports Commission kind of serves as that nucleus to that team, and then we build up around that team, and it takes a village to host these events. But in particular with this Women's Final Four, at the table with us are USF, our host institution, our partners at the city and the county, of course, Amalie Arena, a great place to play and visit Tampa Bay, our Convention and Visitors Bureau, along with a local organizing committee and a lot of workers that are grinding behind the scenes to make this a huge success. Mm-hmm. We say all the time, we don't judge our success on whether we win the business, it's whether we win it back. So to have a record fourth here in our community really does speak volumes to how this community wraps its arms around these opportunities. And we are just grateful to be working with our dear friends at the NCAA again.
Yeah. People talk a lot about what an event like this can bring to the city or a city in terms of the sort of monetary value, I guess, but there's a cost to hosting something too, right? Do you have a kind of a ballpark figure of what it costs to host something like this?
Sure. Well, yes, of course, there's a significant financial investment, and, we raise those funds, with private partnerships that help us get it across the finish line. We also leverage a lot of great community partners that also invest in the championship and provide some incredible in-kind value as it relates to that. The budget itself, can vary from event to event. But as you mentioned, this is a huge economic driver to our area and our region. And even equally as a priority to us is the social impact that these major events have in our community. So we're constantly, partnering with the NCAA because they have their own kind of philanthropic community initiatives, but also making sure that we're aligning those with our community's need and creating legacy programming that will last long after the confetti falls here. And so there's just so much more than 3 games that take place in this community as a result of this major event coming in. And of course, the immediate exposure that our community is going to get, clearly airline travel and heads in beds, and having so many folks enjoy our restaurants, bars, attractions. The economic impact is significant, but this is a total package from economic to social impact.
And it's about 30,000 fans expected to be in Tampa for the event. So, I mean, what does that do for the city of Tampa?
Yeah, I mean, clearly a huge boost, and we do expect 30,000 fans. This championship since 2019 has seen significant growth, right? Just the sport itself, but then there's the investment, the exposure that has really complemented it. And so we know there will be a lot more fans here in market than have tickets to the game. And so when you think about that, they're coming in and they're hosting private parties. We have a lot of event organizers that are here that are hosting their own programming alongside the event, whether it's summits, happy hours, board meetings. I mean, we've really seen it all. And so the basketball community as well as global brands are tying and tethering to this event. They want to be a part of it. And if not in that venue, then alongside it. So that just has elevated that economic impact so much more.
Speaking of the basketball community, the popularity of women's basketball has been steadily growing. You have the college game making it to the big time with Iowa's Caitlin Clark breaking records for the women and men's games. Have you seen, or how have you seen the fans grow or change over the years?
Sure. Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with, I mean, you look at like just the big three, right? It's the exposure that you can't turn your TV on these days in basketball season and not see women's hoops, equally as you are seeing men's hoops. So this trickle down of youth are growing up, if you can see her, you can be her. It's growing the game. It's the attendance records across the country because the fan experience is so great, because the product is so great. And then you've got the investment, right? These brands are investing in women's sports, and you've got great players, and we've had great players playing this sport for a very, very long time. But you start to shine a light on them and tell their story, attach them to a brand through NIL and all of the other things. Then this makes it so much more available and accessible to youth who are living on social media. So it's this huge and most amazing kind of trickle down and trickle up effect that's taking place that's just growing the sport.
So you said there's probably more people in town for this event than there are tickets to the actual games. What else are people going to be doing then? What else is out there for them throughout this competition?
Sure, yes. So all of the ancillary events that are kind of sanctioned under the NCAA umbrella and presented by their corporate champions and partners are all free. They're all family friendly, and they take place Thursday to Sunday. One I want to highlight is Super Saturday. There's literally 6 free events that take place on Saturday. So that day between the games is one that we highly recommend the community to come out to, because if you don't have tickets to the game, you can come experience this championship in a million different ways. We tip off Super Saturday at Curtis Hickson Park with the Bounce presented by Buick, and we'll see 3,000 kids that will all get a free basketball and t-shirt. They will be dribbling their way from Curtis Hickson Park to Turney Town, which is the convention center. So about a half a mile, we'll have this massive dribble take place. It's some of the greatest drone footage you'll ever see. But then they can go into Turney Town where they can stay and play. That's the NCAA's Fan Festival that has a lot of activations, a lot of great programming. They can work themselves around the Riverwalk and up to Cote-Nochobe Park, where we have party on the plaza at Cote-Nochobe Park. It's a pregame atmosphere. Also has a lot of fan activations and photo ops, music, food, beverage, etc. And then head into the arena. So Super Saturday practice is the 2 championship teams will practice. This is a televised and produced event. The coaches are mic'd up. There's music bumping. It's so fun. But you can get into the arena for free if you don't have tickets to the games to watch the 2 teams practice. Mm-hmm. And then we end back at Curtis Hickson Park with Super Saturday concert featuring Glorilla, female rap artist that will close the night for us back at Curtis Hickson. So no shortage of things to do. The Bounce and Super Saturday practice do require registration, so we just encourage fans to make sure they pre-register, but it is free.
Quick quiz for you, Claire. So the multi-day Final Four competition is kind of part of this calendar of sporting events in Tampa, right? So how does it compare to, say, college football games? Several games happen at Raymond James in December and on New Year's Day, and other collegiate sports like the NCAA hockey Frozen Four and others.
Yes, I mean, I quite honestly very similarly, because when you look at a Frozen Four, we just hosted the NCAA Volleyball Championship in December. Same amount of seats in that arena that we're going to sell out for both of these games. I mean, we did mention, I think there's a significant amount of fans that will be traveling in that may not get into that arena. So you may see a little bit of a bump in terms of visitor travel. But the impact as a whole is very, very similar, because once you're selling out arenas or selling out stadiums, you got a similar amount of folks in town. We also see a lot of extended stays. When you're coming to a destination like Tampa this time of year with great weather, they're coming early, they're staying late, and that again drives significant economic impact.
And then you've got pro teams, the Buccaneers. Imagine they're a big money maker, and the Lightning. I mean, they play dozens of games per year, so they're all sort of contributing to this, I guess, ecosystem of the sports economy in Tampa, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we like to refer to ourselves as Team Tampa Bay. And of course, we, named ourselves Champa Bay a few years back. But this is an incredible sports community and a very unified and supportive one. And that's why we like to call ourselves Team Tampa Bay. We were just, for a great example, we were out at a Lightning game this past week where they honored women in sports. They highlighted the women's Final Four. Then we were out at the Rays game yesterday where Jose Fernandez threw the first pitch, who's the women's basketball coach at USF. Then they cross-promoted the women's Final Four on the big screen. We had the trophy out there. So just this massive amount of collaboration and support of one another. And what they have done and the success they've had in this community has just created sports fans. There's no shortage of things to do in this community on a regular day. But when you bring these types of events to the community and you dump it into the epicenter of our downtown, and you've got a ton of sports fans that already live here, it's set up for success.
When you talk to St. Petersburg officials, they say sports are important, but it's really the beaches that make up the bulk of their tourism. Can you say the same for Tampa?
Well, I think we have different assets, right? Sports are very important. Clearly to us, we've got major franchises here, and with the addition of the Tampa Bay Sun, and then we've clearly got USF and UT, who are powerhouses in their own right, and their conferences and divisions. But Visit St. Pete Clearwater is home to some of the greatest beaches in the country. And so we partner with Visit St. Pete Clearwater quite a bit, especially on those larger bids that require hotel packages that reach to our beaches, because that's a big piece of our destination, and one that we market and promote. And so we have different assets, and I think we work really closely together, to cross promote those, because it's a win-win. It benefits both of us when we do that.
Mm-hmm. Just finally, Claire, what are you looking forward to seeing on the court, on the basketball, in terms of the basketball happening this weekend for the Final Four?
I am looking forward to some great games. I mean, this tournament has been phenomenal thus far. The two teams that have already punched their ticket, those games came down to the wire. We've got two more tonight, so we'll have the field of four finalized on a late game on the West Coast. But I am just looking so forward to great games. I'm looking so forward to elevating the student-athlete fan visitor experience, kind of stopping and pausing and making sure I look around to say, wow, this is awesome. We brought this all to life, and hope that everyone is smiling and having a tremendous time.
Claire Lessinger with the Tampa Bay Sports Commission, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's our show for this week. Florida Matters executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Production assistance for this week's show from Mary Shedden. Engineering support from Jackson Harp. Subscribe to Florida Matters wherever you get your podcasts and watch on YouTube. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks for listening.